Hi, my name is Marilyn Ritchie. I'm a professor of genetics at the University of Pennsylvania. I'm also the director of the Institute for Biomedical Informatics, the director of the Division of Informatics, and also a vice president of research informatics at the University of Pennsylvania Health System. I'm here today to talk to you about big data. It's a really exciting time to be a data scientist. The technologies have evolved in such a way that really in every domain that we work in, the data sets have gotten extremely large. I'm a human geneticist by training, so I do a lot of my research looking at our DNA or the genes across our genome that lead to traits and things like our hair color, our eye color, and diseases that we might end up having. The technology in human genetics is now such that we can look across our entire genome and look at millions of positions in our DNA. For a point of reference, when I got my PhD in the late 1990s, a data set might have had 25 variables. Now we're looking at millions of variables. This is what I mean by big data. At the same time, clinical data has also gotten to be really large. Every time you go to the doctor or to a clinic, they collect information about you, about your height and your weight, about what diseases you might have. They do laboratory measurements. You'll get your cholesterol levels and your glucose levels. All of that information goes into your electronic health record. And that's information that we as researchers can use to do analyses of your data and link it with your DNA to ask questions about what are the patterns in your DNA that might be leading to some of the diseases or the traits that you have. As I said, these data sets have gotten really large, but computational technology now allows us to analyze all of these data sets in really comprehensive ways. And so what I wanted to tell you about today is some of the things we're doing specifically around Alzheimer's disease and dementia, because this is something that many of us are really interested in as our population and many of us age. So first, we can look at the genetics related to Alzheimer's disease. As I mentioned, we can look across our genome and look at millions of positions and see if any of those are related to a frequency of, having Alzheimer's disease, comparing people who have Alzheimer's disease with people who are healthy controls. We look for those relationships between different genes in our DNA, and we find those patterns. And as I said, we're looking through millions of positions to find just a few that might be associated with Alzheimer's disease. This is something that a lot of people in human genetics have been doing for many years. But some of the things that I'm really excited about is looking not only at our DNA, but also all of our clinical data. So as I mentioned, in our electronic health record, there's tons of data elements collected every time we go to the doctor. Well, imagine looking in the medical records of people who now have Alzheimer's disease. Often this is something that happens into the kind of 60s, 70s, 80s, or 90s in terms of age. We have health record data on people that go back for decades. And so we can look for patterns that might have emerged in their clinical data years before they had Alzheimer's disease and start to see, is there something in their record that might be predictive of who is going to go on to develop Alzheimer's disease compared with others who age without developing AD or other types of dementia. Another thing that we really like to look at is the relationship between Alzheimer's disease and other clinical conditions or clinical comorbidities. Some people with Alzheimer's disease have a more vascular phenotype. So this is things having to do with their blood lipid levels, for example, where there are other hypotheses about the relationship or the link between sleep and Alzheimer's disease or infection with Alzheimer's disease. We can use artificial intelligence and machine learning to take all of that clinical data, all of these different hypotheses and questions we may have, and put them into these machine learning algorithms and mine this big data to try to find the patterns. Can we understand the relationship between Alzheimer's and some of these other conditions, and maybe even find that there are subtypes of Alzheimer's disease that maybe then we can go back and look at the genetics. Maybe certain parts of our DNA predict who's going to have kind of the vascular type of Alzheimer's disease or vascular dementia, who might have sleep-related conditions that lead to Alzheimer's. And the way that I like to think about this, because artificial intelligence and machine learning sounds really complicated, but this is a type of technology that we encounter in our day-to-day life. If you go to something like Netflix or to Amazon, a place where you're trying to search for things, and you'll often get suggestions. So people who enjoy the type of show that you do also like all of these other shows, or people who purchase this often purchase all of these other things. What's happening is machine learning on big data, in this either consumer data or media data, to try to find patterns that go together. Those are the same types of algorithms that we're trying to apply to medical record data and genetic data, to try to find the patterns that predict kind of what clinical conditions go with what and what genes go with which clinical conditions. The last thing I would mention is that as many of us are wearing different, mobile technologies, wearables, and we carry around cell phones, collecting a lot of other data about our environment, our exposures, how much exercise we get. Some people are tracking how much they eat. This is all other data that we can think about linking with our DNA and our clinical data to better understand our disease risk profiles. As I said at the beginning, it's a really exciting time to be a data scientist. We have methods and technologies that allow us to put all of these data together in really interesting ways. And this is just some of the things that we do to try to find what is leading to disease and how to start to develop cures and treatments and maybe even prevention strategies. Thanks for your time.